Do you ever look back at old photos and videos of yourself and go, wow, I was really cringe?
Oh, we pointed out that this movie is long. Ha 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 ha.
I don't normally do that. But lately,
Just fuck me. Just fuck me right in the ass.
yeah, that was pretty cringe of me. I'm kind of cringe sometimes. Let's not drink straight gin today. That feels like a bad idea. I've made myself a G&T instead. Delicious. Yum, yum. Hello! How are you, metalheads of the internet? Guys, gals, and non-binary pals of the internet. Welcome to a brand new episode of The Metal Meltdown. It is I, your gracious host, as always, Uncle Melty, and today we celebrate 5 years of Nostalgia Critics The Wall. 5 years of Nostalgia Critics The Wall, the album review by moi. And to an extent, we celebrate 5 years of this era of what I call the golden age of the Metal Meltdown. I've been on YouTube in some capacity for some time. I've been on the internet. I've had blogs, and I remember doing like Let's Play channels back in the day with friends, like near the end of high school, going into college, and like really just trying to do whatever I felt it took to be famous on YouTube, really wanting a slice of that pie. And this was still kind of true near the end of 2019. But with 2020, like with the COVID-19 pandemic and with me, growing older, growing more mature, and just wanting more out of life, it was like, why am I doing it this way? Why am I doing things this way? Like, why aren't I just making the content that I want to make on my terms? Why am I trying so hard to be something else, to be somebody else? Why don't I just be me? And now here we are, 5 years later. And I won't dare suggest that this is the biggest channel on YouTube, because it isn't. But we have grown quite a bit. And, I mean, we do have a fairly decently sized audience, a fairly diverse one that is committed and one that does tune in, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very happy about that. I feel very good about that. I feel like with the help of other YouTubers as well, might I add, like Metal Trenches, The Forge Masters, Metal Tempest, Mad Mike, and a few others as well, that we've created the space that we should have had and that we wish we had and that we needed when we were kids trying to get into metal. And I love that, and I'm proud of that. I truly am. And that's why I've always been disappointed in the fact that Nostalgia Critics The Wall, the album review, is my most popular video on the channel still to this day, and it remains a favorite for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, it is their entry point into the Metal Meltdown. This video marks the end of the dark ages of the Metal Meltdown and the beginning of this golden age of the Metal Meltdown. This video represents everything that I used to be, and I really don't like that. Like, there's no actual insider conversation in this video. There's no interesting, unique perspective. Nothing is explained clearly. It's just the ramblings of an angry, autistic metalhead online. And granted, for something like Nostalgia Critics The Wall, that might still be valid, because, I mean, this is a project that continues to infuriate and fascinate people 5 years later. But even so, considering the kind of content that I like to make, considering the kind of stuff that I like to do, considering the kinds of things I like to talk about, I look back at that video and it's frustrating and upsetting and disappointing to me that that remains the most popular video. And there's probably nothing I can do about that. I can't control what videos blow up and what videos don't. What I can do today is make the kind of video that I would have made if I were the person then that I am right now. To celebrate 5 years of Nostalgia Critics The Wall, to celebrate 5 years of Nostalgia Critics The Wall, the album review, to celebrate 5 years of this golden age of the Metal Meltdown, we will be re-reviewing Nostalgia Critics The Wall with insight, new perspective. I will actually explain myself. I won't just scream and yell like an idiot, like a moron. So let's start by providing some very basic background information and context, just in case there's anyone out there who maybe has no idea what Pink Floyd and The Wall or the Nostalgia Critic are and what these names mean and what they do. I find that hard to believe on the internet in 2024, but just in case, here we fucking go. Pink Floyd is an English progressive and psychedelic rock band, and The Wall is their 11th full-length studio album released in November of 1979. It is a very complex and high-concept album, even by the standards of concept albums, one that deals with a variety of issues, some of which are thoroughly detailed and explained pretty obviously for the listener. Others are more subtle, others are more abstract, and these themes become harder to interpret and even more confused with the 1982 film Pink Floyd's The Wall, which is a movie based on the story, on the themes, and on the music of this very same album. Put very simply, the story of both the album and the film is that of Pink, a jaded young rock star who constructs a self-imposed psychological wall of self-isolation, with various bricks in that wall being created and formed and shaped by experiences in Pink's life. This includes his experiences being systemically abused and exploited by various systems, including the English primary school education system and also the record industry and pop media and pop culture. This includes his experiences with homegrown fascism and the consequences of growing up in a post-World War II world. This also includes his experiences with women, his experiences with romantic, sexual, intimate, personal relationships and partnerships. And there's a pretty powerful animated sequence in The Wall, the movie, in which Pink is depicted, in which he specifically depicts women as sexual, violent, consuming predators. And it's worth noting that there is this kind of autobiographical element to The Wall as well. A lot of Rogers' own experiences and ideas help to influence and shape a good solid chunk of what is on this album. And it does make for a project that I think is extremely interesting, but it's fair to argue that it's dense, that it's convoluted, and that maybe it's a little difficult to really understand and process everything that's happening. It's fair to criticize The Wall as being kind of overwhelming. And this is made worse by the film's lack of clear narrative resolutions, and also by its use of intentionally very provocative and brutal imagery all throughout. And that's why, right off the bat, Nostalgia Critic's The Wall was always going to fail. This is a project that's simply too big, with too much going on, to simply cram into a 20-minute little YouTube video review. A video review that, might I add, is being put together by a man whose bread and butter is deconstructing superhero movies and children's blockbuster films, Stuff like Monster Squad, Batman v Superman, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He is the wrong guy to put this kind of project together. And not only did he put it together, not only did he do a video album review, but he did one with skits and with parodies and recreations of sequences from the film, with new commentary of his own that he's kind of using to kind of make fun of various talking points and ideas from the album and the movie. And he's doing so with the added help of his cast and his crew and musicians like Corey Taylor and Rob Scallon and also fucking Fenna, Satellite City. And the irony is that all of this talent, all of this effort, all of this work is being wasted on maybe one of the worst interpretations of what The Wall is fundamentally about ever. Ever. It was very clear back in 2019 when the video review and when the parody album came out simultaneously that Doug Walker, the Nostalgia Critic, and his team did not understand anything about The Wall and frankly didn't really care to understand. And that remains crystal clear, perhaps even more crystal clear if possible, nearly 5 years later. There is a truly legendary lack of media literacy on display throughout both the review and the album, but also Doug Walker is just, I have to assume almost intentionally, completely misinterpreting so much of what Roger Waters and what Pink Floyd were saying in that movie and on that album. And I have to assume he's doing so to suit the narrative of this parody satire review package, to, validate the existence of this thing. For example, in the song and sequence We Need More Victimization, Doug Walker very foolishly, hilariously, and almost cruelly interprets Roger Waters' very valid criticisms of the systemic abuse and exploitation of children in the education system to Roger Waters just complaining that high school sucks and that that's not a special opinion because everyone knows that high school sucks. But here's the thing, folks. Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 is not about high school being sucky. It very fundamentally is not about that. Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 is very clearly in the album and in the movie about the abuse and exploitation of children in the education system. And this, what about comparisons to funding issues in American high schools is null and void because this isn't about American high schools. It takes place in England in the 1950s. And for some reason, all through the track 2, Doug Walker does this, Dracula impression? Why? What does Pink Floyd and The Wall and education systems and the abuse and exploitation of children have to do with a fictional fucking vampire? What the fuck are you doing, man? And the fact that in the same video and in the same parody album, Nostalgia Critic and the gang would then go, oh, so let me get this straight, Mr. Roger Waters. Are you really comparing high school to the Holocaust? No, they aren't. They're comparing the abuse and exploitation of children to the abuse and exploitation of children. You fucking morons! Again, the only way that you have this take, that you have this interpretation of the source material, is if you look at The Wall and you go, well, obviously, this is about high school. And the only way you have that interpretation is by not fucking paying attention. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It really does get dumber and dumber from there on. In The Floyd Again, for instance, has Doug examining fascist imagery throughout the film, and specifically a sequence where Pink envisions himself as a fascist dictator, relaying hateful rhetoric to a gullible and ignorant audience. And he looks at all of that and goes, well, this could be about anyone. This could be about anything. Politician? Showman? Just put their face here. And the problem with that interpretation is that, no! No! I know that we all have our various political beliefs and ideas and such and blah, 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 but that said, I promise you, if I just put some generic rando Democrat or Republican up on that screen instead of the very obvious fascist dictator, I promise you, the fucking metaphor, the analogy, the meaning of that sequence and of that song, it wouldn't translate. It wouldn't work anymore. And then in So Long Weird Song, he calls The Wall Oscar bait, accusing it of being disingenuous and phony in the process. And then just shortly after that, he argues that the film is silly and that it wastes time on showing World War II with monsters when that literally isn't what's happening. There are animated monsters in various sequences throughout the film, but it's not World War II with monsters. You're talking about this as if it's like a fucking kaiju movie, as if it's fucking Godzilla or whatever the fuck. But it's not that. And the crazy thing is, later on in the video and in the album, in the Fennish trial sequence, Nostalgia Critic and the gang double down on this with new appearances from a slew of has-been hotel reject characters explaining that The Wall is all sizzle and no steak, all style and no substance, that the animated monsters don't get enough screen time and they exist simply to be animated monsters. The irony of this sequence is that it's being delivered by animated characters that are underdeveloped and that I don't know fucking anything about. Just the absolute audacity to have these DeviantArt Rule 34 OC characters tell me that they are fully fleshed, fully realized characters while critiquing monsters present throughout the fucking Wall movie because they don't show up enough is ridiculous. And again, the only way you have this interpretation is by not paying attention to what the Wall is about. The monsters are not underdeveloped. They are very real reflections of the fears and insecurities that Pink prominently displays throughout the film. They represent the various bricks in the Wall. You know, the thing that the fucking movie and the fucking album are about! And I can't even understand half of what these characters are saying. They all have such strong accents and their words slur together sometimes. And the only thing crazier than Doug Walker being so ignorant as to what the album and the movie are actually about is the fact that occasionally Doug Walker admits that he's ignorant to what the album and the film are actually about. Like, he makes that very clear, especially in Comfortably Dumb, where he just admits, I don't fucking get it. And I don't think I fucking want to either. And then there's a bunch of stuff that just has nothing to do with the Wall, and it just kind of feels like Doug riffing and doing his own thing and trying to sandwich his own crap in there. Waiting for the Point is a great example. At a certain point, Doug Walker just starts talking about people being mean to him on Twitter and shit like that, and it's like, what the fuck does this have to do with the Wall, bro? And then out of fucking nowhere, at the very end, Corey Taylor does a cover of the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song. And like, why? And I remember back in 2019, some people actually tried to defend this and they went, actually, Corey Taylor sometimes plays this song at his solo shows just for funsies. And that's fine, whatever. That doesn't fucking matter though, because this isn't one of his fucking solo shows for funsies. This is a fucking album review, video review, parody of The Fucking Wall from Pink Floyd. Tell me, what the fuck does SpongeBob SquarePants and the fucking guy from Slipknot have to do with fucking Pink Floyd? Fucking explain that to me! I fucking dare you! I dare you to think of a fucking reason why that fucking makes sense and why that needs to be here! Alright, I gotta come back down to earth for a second. Whew, it's fucking hot in here too. I'm getting all sweaty. I'm getting all fired up and pumped up talking about this. I'm getting all angry again. Need a drink. I drank more of that off-screen than I thought I had. Alright, so, the lyrical and conceptual content of The Wall, more specifically, Nostalgia Critic's The Wall, is trash. Obviously. Duh. Doug Walker very clearly does not understand The Wall, and he very clearly does not want to understand The Wall, and he goes out of his way to misinterpret and to misunderstand so much of the themes and ideas and concepts present throughout the film and the album, and he also actively tarnishes the album and its very existence. He accuses it of being an art house ego trip, and that it's Oscar bait, and it's phony, and Roger Waters, you know, there's nothing legitimate that he's saying. He's a whiny millionaire rock star. Fuck him. And then out of the blue, he goes into completely unnecessary, irrelevant territory, like talking about people being mean to him on Twitter and, you know, singing the SpongeBob song and shit like that. But you know, we know that that's trash. We've known that for 5 years. What about the musical content? Because that sometimes gets lost in the conversation. And, for good reason, because there's not much to talk about. Rob Scallon, to his credit, did an admirable, respectable job at recreating, imitating the various melodies, arrangements, soundscapes, and dynamics of the original The Wall album that were present on the original The Wall, the album. But it's just kind of bland, like it really lacks that same kind of heart, that same soul, that same lush, psychedelic sound and feel, that same immersive kind of aura and atmosphere. And it just feels really cheap, partially because it is, like I can't imagine a lot of money was put into the music aspect of this, but nevertheless. Like most of the time, I'm just listening to karaoke backing tracks. Like musically, there's really nothing to really talk about. And that's why so much of the focus is always put on what Doug says and what the Nostalgia Critic crew does on the album and in the video review. I can't believe I never once thought to mention that Doug Walker is not a very good singer, but since we're still here, spoiler alert, Doug Walker is not a very good singer. He has a naturally shrill, high-pitched, nasally voice that doesn't lend itself well to a lot of the vocal techniques attempted across the album. And it's just very clear that this man has no formal training or natural singing talent whatsoever. There are a slew of over-the-top, silly, cringeworthy voices and accents all throughout this thing, vocal belts and howls that fall really, really flat. Now granted, when it comes to comedy music, it's probably more important to be funny than it is to be like an amazing singer. But think about it this way. There are so many comedy musicians who are also great singers. Weird Al, Jack Black, Danny Sexbang. They are genuinely good singers, and they are also funny. And if they weren't genuinely good singers, I feel like a good chunk of their material is strong enough that they'd probably be okay. Doug Walker is not funny enough to get away with not having a great singing voice, and he's not good enough of a singer to get away with not having great comedy. And it's also like, hey man, if you were going to spend all this time and use all these resources to have all these people here, including Rob Scallon and Corey Taylor, then surely you could have spared a weekend with a vocal coach. Just a thought. Do with that information whatever you wish. The cruelest and most ironic thing about Nostalgia Critic's The Wall is that in the video review, Doug Walker, via an advertisement for the album, which was available to buy and stream, says that the album and the entire project by extension was a labor of love, and it was a tribute to Pink Floyd and The Wall. And at no point listening to the album or watching the review do I ever feel that love. What I feel instead of love for Pink Floyd's The Wall is love for Nostalgia Critic's The Wall, is love for Nostalgia Critic's vision and version of The Wall. Because while I know it's very tempting to say that Nostalgia Critic's The Wall is very lazy, and it certainly is in at least a few departments and capacities, overall it's clear that a lot of effort was put into it. Like, so many costumes, so many visuals, so many songs and sequences, everything had to be written, filmed, edited. The Fenna's trial animation sequence probably took months to put together. I imagine that there were scheduling issues with Corey Taylor and his son Griffith Taylor as well. Like, it is fair to say that this is a labor of love, but not for Pink Floyd's The Wall, but for Nostalgia Critic's The Wall, but for Nostalgia Critic's vision and version of The Wall. And the irony of calling Pink Floyd's The Wall an art house ego trip while going to all of these efforts to show that you just fundamentally don't understand The Wall is really, really fucking funny. And that's why Nostalgia Critic's The Wall infuriates and fascinates so many people 5 years later. Like, it is a truly legendary fuck-up of epic proportions. But I do have to close this video off, or start to wrap things up, by saying that I thank the Nostalgia Critic for making that legendary fuck-up of epic proportions. Because had Nostalgia Critic's The Wall not happened, there would be no Nostalgia Critic's The Wall album review. And had that video not happened, I'm not sure the Metal Meltdown would have reached tens of thousands of people the way that it did. And I'm not sure that it would have pushed me to keep trying and to change and to make the Metal Meltdown what it is today, what it is right now. Like, yeah, Doug Walker absolutely, undeniably fucked up. But like, yeah, so what? So does every fucking YouTuber at a certain point. So does every fucking person at a certain point. I fucking promised to eat a t-shirt if Time 2 from Winter Sun ever saw the light of day. Those words bit me in the fucking ass last week, I tell you what. It's not about fucking up, it's about what we learn from fucking up. It's about changing. It's about making the changes to be the person you want to be. People make mistakes all the time. It's only really a problem if you never learn from these mistakes. And I think Doug Walker actually has learned from these mistakes. He's gone back to his regular shtick, which I'm not really into personally, but there was a time when I would have eaten that the fuck up. And I've learned from mistakes that I've made. For instance, I'm never going to promise to eat a t-shirt ever again. So as bad as Nostalgia Critic's The Wall is, I'm grateful that it exists. I'm grateful that it gave me the audience that I have, that it helped to give me the audience that I have, and I'm grateful that, you know, the momentum of the Metal Meltdown kind of helped me change myself, and it helped me change this channel. And we have this. and we're here now. And maybe it's not perfect, but it's mine, and I'm pretty proud of it. Final score, 0 to 5. An offensive, insulting, sinful travesty of a multimedia package, but one that is iconic, one that is fascinating, one that is hilarious, one that the Metal Meltdown weirdly would not exist, at least not in this capacity, without. So, fuck you, Doug Walker, but also, thank you. And cheers, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. So the golden age of the Metal Meltdown. Here's hoping for 5 more excellent years, and we'll see beyond that. I don't know if I want to do this in like 10 years. We'll see. If you get me to like 1 million subscribers, then we'll talk. Whatever. For now, let's just have fun and talk about music and do fun things. Cheers, y'all. Cool! I'm going to move this out of camera, actually. Cool! All right, subscribe. Other videos, join us on Discord. I love you, and have a great day.